Well, good morning, everybody. We are starting a brand new series, finally. It's been a few weeks since we said we were going to start it, but now we're actually beginning. A brand new series. I'm excited about this. We're calling it Fringe Benefits. And, you know, depending on your job or your career path, you may not be like extremely familiar with fringe benefits. Am I right? Because not every employer offers them and not every employee earns them. But let's just get all on the same page here when it comes to a fringe benefit package or whatever. This is anything that's offered to you as an employee that is outside. It's at the employer's discretion that is outside of your salary. And so it could be anything. I mean, anything that is a benefit to you that's kind of above and beyond. It's that, you know, maybe some meal vouchers or, you know, be able to, you know, get a paid vacation or health insurance. So, you know, there's different things, maybe a pension plan or, you know, retirement package or 401k or, you know, stock options. There's all kinds of things that can be offered, you know, the use of a company car. But when you put all these things together, what's so great about these fringe benefits and what's so attractive about them is when you put them all together with your, you know, a decent salary, it really becomes quite an attractive offer. It becomes a salary package kind of all together. And that is what employers often use to kind of lure in or to attract qualified, really quality employees, not only to come, but then to stay. And so that's what fringe benefits are. But in terms of this series, this is kind of where I was going as I was thinking about this. How do I want to start this? How do I want to think about this? And here was where my thoughts went. And maybe you can help me with this, but every other place in culture outside of like, you know, golf greens and clothing, okay, the word fringe always is used with a bit of a negative connotation, except for fringe benefits. You know, when you think about it, I mean, these are some of the thoughts that I had. You know, there's fringe culture. You know, and every generation has kind of that fringe culture, those who are kind of marginalized, those who sort of buck the system, you know, and kind of have their own sets of values that are different than kind of the norm and the mainstream. And we, you know, call them different things. They're hippies and, you know, punks and goths and hipsters and, you know, whatever it is, but we've named them a lot of different things, but there's just always a group of people who are willing to kind of flow upstream and to think differently. And it's like, but then they live so differently that we sort of think suspiciously about them. You know, we're a little skeptical of why they think that way. And then here's another one, and this is a large category, fringe science. And several years ago, you may have watched the TV show Fringe. I did. It was quite enjoyable, but it was super weird. And it's because there are actually people, like everything they discussed on there are real theories that people actually try to grapple with and figure out today. But it's really like nobody in the kind of mainstream world, because all of those things have been debunked already in mainstream thought and view. And so, and yet, so there's these kind of pseudo scientists that go out and they're willing to kind of go after the bizarre and the far out kind of ideas. And they're real different. And then even in politics, there's a fringe party. You know, we say that we're a two-party system, and the reason for that is because in this country, the majority of people fall into one of those two parties. But the truth is there's really multiple parties. This is really a multiple party, so it's kind of infinite potentially. But the thing is, those are all fringe parties. In other words, they make up such a negligible vote, a negligible part of the electorate that they really don't have any influence. And so those are people out there. They're people on the sidelines. They're marginalized. You know, they think differently, but yeah, they don't have a lot of influence. And honestly, when we think about it, it just is so negative when we use the term. I mean, this is kind of derogatory. We're thinking about people that we're skeptical of, people that are different. They do things different. They live different. You know, there's such pushback. But then there's fringe benefits, okay? Fringe benefits is like the one positive kind of, you know, connotation that I could think of. It's like, I couldn't think of any other thing. Maybe you can, but fringe benefits are a positive thing in our world. At least that's the way we approach it. And after all, they're benefits, you know, so they benefit us. They're things that we want, things that we go after, things that we desire, sometimes things that we actually do need. And so they seem very positive. But But the truth is, and we've all maybe experienced this ourselves, or we've seen other people, we've at least heard of other people who have been in these positions, but where they end up in a job that they hate, but they feel like they have to stick it out because they've got these benefits. And they don't want to lose those benefits, and they just can't. Matter of fact, they feel trapped. They feel like they're in a place where they can't let go of some of those things because of, the stage of life they're in, or some of the things that are going on in their lives, and so they can't lose that. They have to keep those benefits coming in. And so at that point, it becomes a little negative. It's not something necessarily that we want to go after, but the thing is, when I was again thinking about this in terms of this series, I was thinking, so what is it then, more generally speaking, not just in terms of fringe benefits and in the realm of business and companies and jobs, but what is it that makes these so attractive, but also something that's dangerous to spend all our time focused on? And here's kind of what I landed. And this took me a long time to create this thought, but I think this is pretty accurate. When you only focus on the benefits, just generally speaking, when you only focus on the benefits, then what was once your goal becomes your burden. Think about this. And we've all experienced this. And not just in the realm of business and our job, but really in any realm, any aspect, any area of our lives. Maybe there was that car. Remember that? The car you just had to have? Was the car, I've just got to have it, like now. And you see all the benefits, and matter of fact, you only see the benefits, or you fail to see the cost involved, or you choose not to see some of the cost, the extra cost involved, and it's not always monetary cost, right? Because there's a lot of things that go along with that new car. Now I'm going to spend extra time cleaning it, because after all, it's a new car. And so I want to keep it clean. I want to keep it smelling good. And, kids, you can't get in my car any longer because this is daddy's car. And so you can't eat French fries in my car. And so there's cost involved now because now my kids can't get in my car. And, now I've got to maintain it, and I've got to have extra insurance, and on and on. And maybe it was the job, though, for some of you. It was the job that you did. You just said, I need this other job. I want this other job. I just want to move. I'm tired of this. And all you could see was grass is greener on the other side. All you could see were the benefits. And you'd kind of lost sight of, you didn't ask the right questions. You didn't ask, is this going to take me where I want to go? Is there advancement opportunities at this new job? Is this new job going to take more time away from my family? Is this new job going to require a lot of traveling that I really wasn't expecting? Maybe, when you were in college, the choice was, do I join a sorority or do I join a fraternity? Do I get into one of those? Do I do that? And I don't know if that was a question for you, but I was grappling with that. My very first semester of school, it was actually a quarter system back then. I don't know if any of you remember those days, but it was a quarter system. My very first quarter of school, I decided I was going to pledge a fraternity, Sigma Chi. I was going to pledge Sigma Chi. And sure enough, I got in. I was in that initial pledge class, and it was great. But what I didn't take into account were all the costs involved, the extra time that it was going to take, the dues and the fees, and not just financial though, but just like the obligations and the requirements, the places that I had to be, the things that I had to clean up on Saturday mornings. Right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there were just a lot of costs involved, and all the temptations that were involved in that. Matter of fact, I did that my very first semester, and it really ended up not being much of a decision because I didn't make my grades that semester, so I got kicked out. Like I didn't even get to pledge. I didn't even get to get in. Like they kicked me out beforehand. You ready for this? I don't mind confessing. I made a 1.33 with a line over it. You know what I'm saying? My first quarter of school. That's hard to do. You have to work kind of hard to do that poorly without just completely flagging every class. Like I literally had a 1 point. I didn't even know that was possible at that point in my life. And so I didn't get in. But here's the point. There are benefits to these things, and when you only focus on the benefits, the very thing that was your goal to begin with, was the actual goal to begin with, becomes a burden, because now you've ended up in a dead-end job, a job that you didn't expect to be, a job that you don't even like, and you don't know how to get out. Now you've got a car that you really can't afford, and that you're paying all this money toward and attention to, and yet you really need to get out of it. Or maybe you've ended up making some decisions in school that you just really never intended to make. You've started to kind of become the person you thought you would never actually be. And here you are. And so you're experiencing the cost that you didn't pay attention to at first, and now it's actually become a burden. And here's what I think kind of the underlying principle is here in terms of this series, okay? So that's just generally talking, again, I think this is true for all of us in any area of life, but specifically concerning this series, I think I finally stumbled on what's the actual principle that's kind of running underneath all of this. When you aim at the fringe, you'll miss the target. When you aim at the fringe, you'll miss the target. I like to bow hunt, and so I'm having to do like a lot of practice right now, and some of the things that are hard to take into consideration when you're practicing on a stationary target are like, different difficult distances. Sometimes it's not always 20, 30, and 40 yards. Like sometimes you're having to shoot the gap, is what they call it. You're having to shoot like kind of in between, and there's wind speed. And then if an actual live animal is moving, and then if you're actually shooting from a tree, you're having to, consider the angle and all of those things. But when you're shooting, just standing on the ground 20 yards from a target because you got it all sighted in and everything's cool and your heart isn't racing, it's a lot easier. And so I forget that all of the costs that are involved in shooting my bow are really the parts of the fringe. And if I'm not paying attention to that, then ultimately I'm not going to hit the target. I'm going to miss altogether. And that's not what we want to see happen. And ultimately those things become a burden. So here's where I want to go today. I want to look at Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5, Mark's gospel, and we're going to look at a story that I was actually reading when I had the idea for this series. It's actually a couple of years ago when I wrote these thoughts down. But this story is actually included. It's in Mark chapter 5, but it's included in Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel as well. But Mark gives us some extra details that I really like. And what you have to remember is that this isn't just Mark's word. Mark wasn't an eyewitness. Mark actually spent a lot of time with Peter, and so most of his information in his gospel comes from the retelling of stories from Peter. And Peter was an eyewitness. Peter was actually there. And so here we are at the end of chapter 5, and Peter's kind of recounting this story of what happened this day. Mark's writing it down. And he's telling what happened. And Jesus at this point, it was kind of early in his ministry. We got to set the scene. And Jesus has kind of gone back and spent a couple of days gone back and forth across the lake of Gennesaret, or the Sea of Galilee. And we think that he's probably ended up back in Capernaum at this point. And so that's kind of at the beginning of this. And, he lands back in Capernaum. And there, of course, because of all the crazy things that he's been doing, people are gathered around Jesus. There's always a crowd, especially early on in his ministry. People were not, just terribly offended by him. They weren't hearing a lot. All they knew was that Jesus was doing some really incredible stuff. And Jesus was different. He was distinguished. He was a rabbi. He was a teacher. He was well-spoken. But he also wasn't like one of those other rabbis. He was actually kind. He treated people fairly. He loved on people. He didn't, walk around acting like he was better than everybody. He associated with those who were broken, with those who were unclean, with those who were dirty, with those who were outcast, with the marginalized, with those on the fringes. That's where Jesus spent most of his time, and people flocked to him, and they wanted to come see him. As a matter of fact, people were doing at this point in his ministry exactly what I think a lot of us tend to do when it comes to a relationship with Jesus. We think their thought. We think, I don't care who he is or what he believes. If he can do all of that, surely he can do something for me, right? I mean, if he can do all those things, because they had seen him do some incredible things. They had at least heard, he's healing people. People who couldn't walk can walk now. People who were blind, they can see now. People who were infirm, people who were sick, people who were dying. He raised them. He's healing them. He's fed thousands of people with just a little bit of food. It's unbelievable. And so, of course, you can imagine. I mean, that's what I would do. That's where I would want to go. And I would have some of the same thought. Well, daggum, I kind of want to get on the action. Like, if Jesus can do all of that, maybe he'll throw a little bit of that love my way. Maybe he can do something for me. And so we pick up here, and in this crowd, you gotta know, so this man named Jairus has come, and he's just laid at Jesus' feet, and he's begging Jesus, please come. I just want you to come to my house. My daughter is dying. My young daughter is sick. She's dying. I just want you to lay your hands on her, and I know you can heal her. And so Jesus goes with him and begins to follow him, and the crowds, if you can kind of imagine the scene, all the dust is kicking up, maybe it's midday, and they're walking down the middle of the road, and they've got all of these people gathered around. Perhaps hundreds of people are gathering because all of this stuff is just taking place in that region, and Jesus is there, and it's like, I just want to be around Jesus. And so there they go. They're on the way to Jairus' house. So if you can just kind of picture that in your head. Well, there was a woman there, and you've probably heard this story. There was a woman there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, subject as in enslaved to something, to this illness, to this sickness. She's been subject to bleeding, and regardless of the speculation about what the actual problem was or the diagnosis, regardless of that, here's what we do know. She was a woman, and so she was already on the margins. She was already an outcast. And it doesn't talk about a husband or anybody who was caring for her. And so very likely that she was couldn't get a job, that she certainly wasn't taken care of. She had this sickness that she had had for years and years. She was suffering. She was hurting. And there was no kind of government assistance. There was no healthcare program that was, specially geared to those who couldn't take care of themselves. And so here she is. That is, at the very least, her situation. And on top of that, she can't go to church because she's unclean, because there's bleeding involved. And so she she is constantly unclean, so she can't participate in synagogue. She can't participate in ceremonial rituals and all the religious things that matter so much to them. And so she's literally in every area of her life is a complete outcast. She has no hope. She has no body. And then she hears that Jesus is coming. Now, you can imagine, Jesus is coming, so I want to go be a part of that because maybe, just maybe, he can do something for me. So she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors. So, I'm thinking these guys probably, even if there were a few that were okay, probably there were a lot of them actually taking advantage of her situation. She's a woman. She has no authority. Nobody's going to believe her word against mine. And so I'm just going to act like I'm doing some stuff, and act like I'm fixing her up. But she never got better. So you can just imagine, this is the end of her rope. This is literally last ditch effort. She doesn't know where to go, what to do, and nobody's helping. And she hears that Jesus is coming, and she's heard about Jesus. And so she's like, I think I'm going to try to make my way into the crowd. She had heard about Jesus, and she knew he was coming down the street. So she came up behind him, and who knows how she slithered, she crawled, who knows what this looked like exactly. But in the midst of this crowd, she came up behind him and she touched his cloak because she thought, well, if I just touch his cloak, I'll be healed. That's all I need to do. I just need to get really close and touch his cloak. And in Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel, they actually say she reached out and touched the fringe of his outer garment, the tassels, the edges of his garment that he would have worn over his other robes. That's the part. Literally, it was. She got his close to Jesus, just close enough, just to be able to touch just the edge without, literally she couldn't have gotten any farther away and still have touched a piece of his clothing. You know what I'm saying? And her whole goal was just probably some superstition going on in her mind. Maybe if I believe that Jesus does great things, but I'm going to go with some superstition here. I'm not going to bother him. He is a rabbi after all, and I'm a woman, a sickly, unclean woman. So I'm just going to, without anybody knowing, discreetly, I'm just going to touch the edge of his robe and then slip into the crowd. But then this happens. I love this. Just pay attention to this. Immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed, not just healed, that she was freed. The same word healed is freed here as well. And so that's why it's translated this way, because there's something that has happened. She's no longer subject or enslaved to this illness. She was freed from her suffering and she knew it. Well, here's what is so crazy. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, backing up. Jesus stops in this moment. This is, I didn't put it on here because I just want to walk through this for just a second. So Jesus knows something happened. What's interesting, though, is that because it's like all she did was touch your robe, and the way Mark describes it is he knew that power had left him, okay? So there was a spiritual awareness, but he didn't know who it was. That's so funny to me. It's like he knew just by her touching his robe that power went out from him, and yet he didn't know who it was. It's just crazy. Because there were still physical limitations, but spiritually he was very aware. He knew something had happened, and I love this. Like, he stopped, and Mark says, he stopped and he turned around, so just imagine, I imagine that the entire crowd, just pauses with him. It's like, uh-oh, Jesus stopped. I just imagine it got quiet, and his disciples are thinking, what you doing? And it's quiet, and everybody's kind of, wondering what's about to happen, what's going to happen, wonder what he's doing. I mean, he is in a hurry after all, Jairus is kind of waiting like, Jesus, we got to go. And yet Jesus says this really powerful moment, and he says, somebody touched me. Who touched me? And his disciples, I just can imagine, especially Peter. I mean, come on, Peter was a little outspoken, a little ahead of himself, had a little bit of, foot in mouth disease. And I can just imagine that it was Peter who was like, Jesus, I mean, seriously? There's 675 people standing all around you right now. Like the answer to your question is everybody. Everybody has touched you. You've been bumping into people. We're on a little tight street corner here, and you've stopped. And I mean, there's all these people around. What are you talking about? Somebody touched you. Everybody's touched you. But Jesus insists. He just ignores them and says, no. Who touched me? And I just can imagine that this didn't just happen in an instant. There was just calm, quiet, like crickets, wondering what's going to happen. Somebody in trouble? Are they going to get in trouble? Wonder who it was. And don't you wonder what the woman's thinking in this moment? That's what I'm thinking, oh my goodness. I just got healed. I know he must be talking about me, but no way. I'm about to let everybody know that. So I wonder how long it took. And finally, maybe seconds passed, maybe a few minutes, and Jesus just waiting. And the woman, knowing what had happened to her, finally she came and she fell at his feet and trembling with fear. This was so out of sync. It was not protocol. She did things wrong and she knew it. She approached this rabbi the wrong way. She had, just reached out. She knew she was unclean, but she just didn't want anybody to know. And she really wanted to maybe cling to him, but then that wouldn't be right. And so I have respect, and yet I need something from him. And so she's nervous. She didn't know how Jesus is going to respond. And she told him the whole truth. She told him. And she was scared to death. And yet, Jesus takes this moment and he wants to teach her something, because it's so interesting. He clearly wants to teach her something, but also the people who are listening. I mean, he's got this big crowd. And I think he's also speaking through the centuries to you and me. But I'm almost thinking, how embarrassing. Doesn't Jesus know? How embarrassing. I mean, here she is in front of all these people. And people who know her, who have been ignoring her and avoiding her for years, who know her issues and her illness and that she has no money and she's had to beg for money probably, and she's trying to get doctors paid off, and she's in debt up to her eyeballs, and there's no way, she can't have a job, and she's sick and she's suffering and she's hurting, and she can't, it's been years since she's been, to the synagogue and done any kind of ritual or, cleansing and purification sort of sacrifice. And so here she is, and Jesus is calling her out in this moment. You got to think about that. It's like, why would you do that? This is so important. This is so important. Because Jesus wanted first, I think at least two things he wanted to communicate. Number one, he looks at her and he says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Daughter, as in, you're a part of my family now. You getting that? A relationship has been established. Well, how? What? Because you have a little bit of faith in me. You see, nothing, young lady, there was nothing superstitious or magical that happened here. You reaching out and, touching the edge of my cloak, nothing happened. This isn't, Harry Potter. This isn't something, there wasn't something spooky that happened. You were healed because you put a little bit of faith in me. That's the reason, and I want you to know that, and I want to make sure that everybody around here knows that, because everybody's been bumping up into me, and yet you touched me and you got healed. Well, why is that? Because it's not because you touched my robe, it's because you put a little faith in me. And then he doesn't stop there. But then I also want you to, and everybody's listening at this point, go in peace. I'm not done with you yet. It doesn't end here. It's not just, isn't that great? You had a little faith and you got healed. Now I want you to, over the long haul, I want you to go in peace and be freed from your suffering. It's like, well, hold up. I thought she was already healed. Well, so what's Jesus talking about? Is he confused? No. Jesus is talking about this ongoing healing and restoration and freedom that she could experience if she was willing to not just put a little faith in Jesus, but now to begin to follow Jesus. There's a difference there. Having a little faith in Jesus and touching the edge of his cloak and, kind of grasping for some fringe benefits may bring a little bit of healing and a little bit of closure and solve some of your problems and help your marriage along the way. But it doesn't mean that you're now following him and that you've given your life to him. And so there's a reason behind this. It's not just that he's communicating this, but it's that he wants everybody to hear it. In front of all these people, in front of God and everybody here who knows all your story, young lady, I want you to identify yourself with me and then begin to follow me from this point forward. Y'all with me there? I think this is what Jesus was communicating to her and to you and me. The benefits of knowing Jesus don't start or end with you are healed. There is so much more. But let's be honest. I think most of us know that, but we don't really want it. We want AAA. You know what I'm saying? We want to just call some roadside assistance and for them to come in a flash and to change our spare tire so we can go about our merry way. We want to touch the edge of the cloak so that we can slip back into the crowd and do what the woman was trying to do. That's, if we're being honest, that's oftentimes our approach to Jesus. We just kind of want, this is going to make my marriage better. This is going to make my finances better. I'm going to learn some good principles for life. I'm going to learn how to be a better husband, a better wife, a better Christian, a better father, a better son, a better daughter. I'm going to learn I'm going to be a better employee. My business is going to do better. It's going to be great. There's so many potential benefits to putting our faith in Jesus and saying, Jesus, this is what I need today. This is how I want. If you would, could you just come in? Could you help me? Could you heal me? Could you make me whole? Could you solve my problem? Could you fix my problem? Could you help me overcome this addiction? The problem is Jesus doesn't stop there. I think Jesus would say to you and me, and I think he was saying to everybody there, I didn't come into this world and I didn't die so that you could be happy. That's great, but that's not why I died. I didn't die so that your finances would be in order. I didn't die so that you would make an A on your test. I didn't die for you so that your kids would go to school happy and healthy and protected and safe. I didn't die so that you could live in comfortably in your 2,500 square foot home with a dog, a cat, and 2.5 kids. All those things I care about, and I want for you, but that's not the aim. That's the stuff that comes on the fringe. Are y'all with me? That's the stuff that's like part of the package, but it's not the package. It's not the main event. It's not the bullseye. It's not the dot on the map. It's not the target. So what is? It's Jesus. She came to Jesus looking for a solution to her problem, but Jesus came to do what? He came to her just to offer himself, like all of himself. Every bit of it, the whole package. I love that you put a little bit of faith in me and that you're trusting me with this part of your life. But now, here's what Jesus is waiting on. I want you to surrender it all now. I want you to go in peace and continue being freed from all of your suffering. That's what I want for you. I want you to go all in with me. I want you to do it like right here. I mean, it's like, that's so embarrassing. Why did he do this? Well, there was something important to Jesus about a public display, a public identification with him, and not just a tiny step of faith. That's important. That's the beginning. But ultimately, just a full-on commitment to follow Jesus, no matter where that leads you, no matter where that takes you. I think Jesus is waiting on you and me to say, that's it. I give up. I surrender. I admit, I've been trying to do this, just trying to kind of come at it, to get the quick fix. And, that's why I showed up at church. And that's why I filled out the form. And I thought maybe somebody could pray for me. And but I don't want to get too involved. I don't want to, get stuck here. I mean, hour a week, that's a good bit. I'm fine with that. And so that's great. And that's a start. And that's a beginning, but Jesus would say there's more, and it's me. It's all of me. I want you to go all in, and I want you to let everybody know it because it's going to change your life. It's going to change your life, but I want you to go all in. What Jesus can offer to you is not the main goal. It's just Jesus. Are y'all with me? This is how it all ties together. The real target isn't what Jesus has to offer. It's just Jesus. It's just Jesus. And watch this. You see, I think he stopped in that moment because he wanted to communicate to this young lady. I want you to take this step of faith, and that's important. But if you really want, watch this, if you really want to follow me, this is why this matters. If you really want to follow me for the rest of your life, if you really want to take a step in that direction, to begin following me for the rest of your life, then I want you to take a step right now. The first step to following Jesus, watch this, the first step to following Jesus for the rest of your life is to take a step right now. Like right here in front of all these people who know your stuff, who know your baggage, who know what you're carrying around, who know what you're capable of, who know how you've handled things in the past and what kind of decisions you make. I'm telling you, in front of those people, I want you to identify with me and then to follow me. Those are different. Identify with me. Don't just say, hey, I'm a Christian, and then go about your merry way. I want you to say, yeah, I put my faith in Jesus, but I also follow him with my life. I'm going to build every part of my life on the foundation of Jesus and who he is. See, at the end of the day, he's not just saying, trust me that I want the best for you, that I'm going to bring you healing, that I'm going to help you with some areas of your life. Ultimately, he's saying, I just want you to follow me. He's inviting you. He was inviting this young lady. He was inviting the people in the crowd to actually begin to follow him. And I wonder if there's anybody in here today who would have the courage to do what she did. I don't think she had to. Don't you know there was that moment that she reflected back on in that interaction with Jesus when she thought, I'm so glad I didn't get overcome with fear. Because, man, Jesus was, he changed my life. I was healed and I could have walked on. I could have slithered off into the crowd and never said a thing, and I don't think Jesus would have called her out. But he waited, and she made the decision to get up in front of all those people and say, it was me. It's me. I have put my faith in Jesus. And I want to follow him for the rest of my life. Because I want all of Jesus. I'm tired of just clinging to what he offers. I'm tired of the fringe benefits. I want Jesus. I want all of Jesus. And I wonder if there's those of you here maybe watching online, if would you be so bold as to do that today? If that's where you are, then the invitation stands. The invitation is for you. So let me just ask, if you're ready to finally give up, you're ready to look up, and you're trusting that God is really going to show up, can I just encourage you right where you are to put your hand up? If that's what you want. Amen. Even those of you watching online at home, hey, maybe a little bit easier for you. That's a decision you'll never regret. I guarantee you she didn't regret making that decision. The decision not just to put a little bit of faith in Jesus to get what she needed, but to go all in and to follow Jesus, to take all that he has to offer. Would you bow your heads with me? I just want to invite those of you who raised your hand, or maybe you didn't raise your hand, and you just know that that's where you are. You're ready to go all in. You recognize this is no longer just about me trying to meet needs or get fixed or to be healed. This is about getting Jesus. This is about a relationship with a Savior. If you're ready to do that, I just want to invite you right where you are to pray something like this. Heavenly Father, I'm done. I surrender to you. It's no longer about what I can get from you. I want all of you. Every bit. And I am committing to follow you wherever that leads, wherever you go. Because I know I'm a sinner. I need a Savior. And his name is Jesus. Jesus is my Savior, and I want him to be my Lord. And I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen.